would like to welcome everybody at this second stakeholder event that was initiated by the FAMILY Consortium, funded by the EU program. But this time we worked together with two other consortia that were funded in the same call, which I'm very happy that we all agreed to do this. So where the FAMILY Consortium really focuses on integrating the family context in the study of mental disorders, we also hope to better predict who is at highest risk to develop mental health problems later in life. We now also work together with the R2D2-MH consortium, which as its focus aims to identify risk and resilience factors that are associated with neurodevelopmental diversity, with a focus on autism, ADHD, and intellectual disability. And as a second consortium, Re-MEND is part of this initiative, which also aims to build resilience against mental illness during the endocrine sensitive life stages. And one of the things that we all realize that is not helping young people is stigma. Andrea is a psychiatrist working in Lugano in Switzerland in the area of youth mental health and prevention, and he focuses on lived experiences.
I'm going to give you a sort of relatively fast overview, a sort of bird eye view of the notion of stigma with respect to mental health professionals, because precisely for the reason that Nelty has mentioned, that I work on early detection and youth mental health, stigma is a particularly relevant issue. And I have some sort of super fast slides at the beginning, just sort of to introduce some of the key concepts that somehow are important, because the notion of stigma is not something completely new. It is actually more than sort of it's as old as human society, basically. But with respect to mental health, we are dealing with a multifaceted phenomenon and also a polysemic term that anyhow interferes with well-being and clinical practice. And most importantly, it creates a barrier to effective mental health care delivery. Usually it is stigmatized with respect to help seekers and proximate caregivers, especially families, but it also creates unique challenges to mental health care professionals, because mental health care professionals are anyhow embedded in society and they suffer from the same prejudicial preconcept that society suffers from, and they can be either perpetrators of prejudice or fighting against prejudice. And of course, understanding and addressing stigma, it's essential for humanization of care, equity, but also quality of treatment. You know, in more contemporary analysis of stigma, what is typically emphasized is that there are four components, basically, that people agree on. One is that there is some sort of labeling of human features. Another concomitant factor is that there is negative stereotyping, so the labels are linked to something undesirable. And then you have a sort of linguistic separation, so it's us versus them. And then you have a power asymmetry, so a difference in economic, political imbalance that anyhow allows the separation. And that's about the classical notion. And now I leave the floor to the first speaker of the panel.
Hello, well, good afternoon, all of you. Thank you so much for the invitation. And I would like to start to tell a little bit more about my story. I already was a child and adolescent psychiatrist. And then in the end of 2017, my husband got a very serious mental illness, a very severe depression, and he had to be admitted to a psychiatric hospital. And for me, well, that's a little bit where my journey with stigma started. The first admission in a psychiatric hospital, it was really, well, quite a life-changing event for our family. And my husband and I, we really wanted to protect our children. So we immediately decided that we wanted to be open to our family and friends. And well, some of them already knew about the depression. But for me, I was really, really hesitant to share it also also on the work floor. So I knew a lot about risks, but what I really wanted to know as a parent and as the partner of my husband was, what can I do to make my family resilient? And there was almost, I had such a difficulty to finding stories of other people who were resilient, and what I could do to make my family more resilient.
But Cecile, is there an angle of stigma that you think it's more proximate to address?
The discrepancy between how we deal with physical conditions in families and how we deal with mental issues in families, just to make people reflect about it, because the discrepancy, it's quite big.
Thanks a lot, Cecile, for sharing these insights. And I also would like to invite Kaylee van Tilburg.
Hi, I'm Kaylee. I worked as a youth peer support worker with lived experience at Curium, the child and adolescent psychiatry unit of Leiden University Medical Center. I am now 25, and I started getting mental health problems when I was, I think, 13 or 14. And in these years, a lot happened. And I also encountered a lot of stigma. I initially came to a psychologist with depressive symptoms, but that also quickly led to an autism diagnosis when I was 15, which is quite late. And that really started a period of a lot of reflection for me, questions about what it meant to have a diagnosis, what it meant for me personally, if I would be a different person with the diagnosis or if I would just be the same. When I was about 18, I got more insight into where the depression might have come from. So the autism played a part in that, but also the fact that I have PTSD, which I didn't know about because I was bullied in elementary school. And from there, we could find better treatments. Medication started to work, and I started to get better and find a therapist that really helped me. Around when I was 20, things really got a lot more stable, and I started to do volunteering work, working with my own lived experience. I started to follow a course on working with my lived experience.
Thank you very much, Kayleen, for sharing all this experiential path. And I was wondering, if there is anything that you think your perspective can specifically illuminate about stigma that can help the group to think in broader terms.
Well, one thing I really learned is that it helps to talk about it. So things get more confusing when you stay quiet, and it's also what Cecil already said. One example of this is I have scars from self-harm, and I choose to wear short sleeves in the summer when I'm with my fellow students. And it gets really awkward if you don't talk about it, because then people are staring, they have questions, and you're avoiding the questions. And I really noticed that once I was just open about it, and I told them, like, do you have any questions about this? Because I can imagine it being confusing. Then it was really quickly, it just dissolved the whole big feeling of, oh, this is a complicated subject. And I think that's a thing that I learned. It helps to be open if I'm comfortable about it, but also helps to just start the conversation from both sides.
Thank you very much. It's my pleasure to introduce the last speaker of this first panel, which is André de Crène. André, I leave the floor to you.
Thank you, Andrea. So I'm not a scientist. I have never been involved in carings in psychiatric care or whatever. It was in business until 12 years ago, but my son started having problems already before I retired. Well, the first issue we had is it took us a lot of time to realize that there was a psychiatric issue. We sensed something, and even when we knew it, you do not understand it. And but what I heard is that it makes a lot of sense, and it's very good to talk about it. But what I also heard here, we don't have the language to talk about it. Now, after all those years that I'm involved in it, I would say it's my third or my fourth career. I'm much more able to explain it and to explain it to myself. Now, the fear of stigma, well, you have stigma, but the fear of being stigmatized is very present. So if I had expressed the fact that my son had a problem, I'm sure that a number of people would have said or even thought, and what is worse, they talk about it amongst themselves without you being present. It's being the elephant in the room. Everybody thinks about it but doesn't speak about it. Is that, of course, he's a strange guy. He has a son who is. And that is very, 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 very difficult to wear. So in other words, it lowers the quality of your life, it lowers the quality of your professional life, and also of your personal life and your relationship with your son. Now, the way to cope with it is, I would like to give. It will take me 3 minutes to explain to it. I went to Australia to visit Australia a few years ago. Now, if you know something about Australia, you know about the convicts. That was in the early 19th century. English judges, criminal judges, sent condemned people to Australia to do forced labor. Now, these people, men and women, they worked there, and some of them escaped from jail, from the workforce camp, and they had an offspring. Now, until a few generations ago, I think 2 generations, it was a stigma on this being a descendant of convicted people. Now, when I was there, when I was in Hobart, I visited the Maritime Museum. I was the only visitor in the morning, except for the lady in the bookshop. So that was an invitation for me to start a talk with her. And very soon, I think it took us 2 minutes to start talking about convicts. And she told me, I am a descendant of convicts. A few generations ago, my parents or grandparents would have never told anybody they were descendants of convicts. But nowadays, it is, and we're proud of it, because our ancestors, they were inventive, they were resilient, and that is a quality that we have and that others may be lacking. So now, instead of feeling stigmatized, they feel proud about it. And my dream is that in some time, people who have had an experience with mental health, they would be proud of it.